Hi, it's Maria again, and I'm going to do part two now. And we covered so much in part one. I did want to explain a little bit more about the instance where my father disappeared, right? And so he was put in the hospital by my sister, and I think I explained that. I think it was very strategic in order to find out all the information about where all the assets were that were part of my parents' estate. But I do remember calling the police and saying, my father's disappeared. I don't know where he is. And I'd call the hospitals and they say he's not there. And that was all part of it. But I remember meeting the chief and he said, I remember you. You called me in 2010. And I said, yes. And I called you in 2011 when my home was stolen as a result of all of the things that were going on with my father, and the inheritance. And the police said, oh no, it's a civil matter, contact an attorney. And I would go to attorneys, and the attorney said, oh no, this is a crime, this is a criminal matter. They can't just go in and show some fake document and say, oh yeah, well, this doesn't belong to her, it belongs to her son, and allow him to be selling it and raping and ravaging it all. And I told the police chief, I said, yes, and I talked to you in 2013 and 2014 and 2015 and 2016 and 17 and 18 and 19 and 20. And in 21 and 22, I came back to Florida, and I went straight to the police station, and I said, are you going to help me? Because my condo has been thieved, as has been my entire inheritance. And so they said, no, you need to call an attorney. Well, I met with like 30 or 40 different attorneys, and they all said, no, actually one had told me, and this was so unbelievable, it took a while for me to even process it, because he said, well, we're not allowed to represent you. And in fact, you won't be allowed to have representation by anyone in the entire state of Florida. And I thought, so what does that mean? That means that I won't have an attorney, and that means that the thefts and all the crimes, the murder of my father, the murder of my mother, the ravaging of everything I owned, and the destruction of our family, the whole ridiculous mess with my children being blackmailed and bribed. I thought, this is beyond the FBI files and investigative reports and things like that. This is a horror story. And so that's how it is, and that's why I came, and that's why I'm still here 2 years later, and barely trying to exist in order to move forward and see. I did go to a councilman's meeting, actually. The mayor was there, and the Clearwater City Council, and I did say that my inheritance was stolen from the confines of the Pinellas County Courthouse. And so how are they going to address that? And perhaps we need to form a committee such that we can look into this, because that much money just doesn't disappear. There are paper trails, and there are people to be deposed, and an investigation, truly. And so anyway, the mayor actually said, we'll get back to you. And that was in November. And so here we are, it's February. Oh, yeah, no one has contacted me at all. In any event, I did want to say, that I was made aware that my sister has hired, who knows, hitmen to actually come after me and sacrifice my life. And at one point I heard that she was so angry with me that I hadn't totally, imploded or whatever, that she was offering them double. So I don't know. There was a man that I met in California when I was there in 2020, I think, and he said, your sister offered me $2 million to get rid of you. And I thought, oh, that's horrible. Because you see, what that does is then people think, oh, well, for 2 million, I'll do it. And so you have all these people then kind of like forming all of these gangs and stuff, thinking, oh, well, we're going to get rid of her and we're all going to be, all celebrating. However, they're going to be celebrating, in the penitentiary, because so many people know about this. And in fact, all the gang stalking and the monitoring and the following and the tampering and all of that stuff, it's all been recorded. And so anyway, we don't want to put energy into this, but we do want to make people aware that there are a lot of things that are going on behind our back that we know nothing about, and that this is a very serious situation. And therefore, it's even more incumbent upon us to take our spirituality seriously, so that we aren't burying ourselves in the mud of lower vibrational energies. In fact, that we can maintain a higher energetic level and be positive and what do they say? Talk to ourselves and talk to ourselves in order to maintain that elevated state, such that we can then attract better things in our life. And here I am today deciding to make this video in the throes of, I had been staying with a friend here, and we were not really getting along very well. And it was time that I went my way. And he was very generous to have me stay here. I had my own room, and I could make videos, and I could do anything I wanted, really, and do my writing and stuff. And so it was very nice. And so this is going to be a very challenging time for me with such low funds, in order to find another place to be as long as this drama continues. It would be nice to just have a judge who actually said, look, I see this, here is the will, here is the trust. It's very clear. It's 50-50. And so that's how it's going to be. So my sister needs to transfer over funds that belong to me, in addition to my home and things like that. And if it's not that home, then another home. But things have to be made even. And so it just seems as if people really don't care, and people will delay. delay. Isn't that the answer for the day? Anything you want done, just don't worry about it. They'll forget about it. Yeah, right. But anyway, excuse me. So in the last video, when I did say that I thought these plots and plans were actually in effect for the last 53 years. And I thought, in order to get someone's estate, in my family, the husband had to die first, right? So he died, and then the estate went to my mother, and my mother was in a facility, so she didn't have the cognition enough to make any decisions or anything. So my sister took that over. However, she wasn't to rewrite everything and say it's not 50-50, it's 100 and 0. I mean, that is not appropriate. And so when we have that kind of a thing, so the two people that have the trust, that are the trustors, when they die, and then the bulk of the estate is divided between the co-trustees, right? And it was my sister and me. It's very clear. There were only two of us. And the only other people listed in the trust and the will were an attorney cousin who was actually supporting me and my interests, and my sister's husband, doctor husband, and he was supporting her. So if anything should have happened to her, then he would take over. And if anything should happen to me, Tom, the attorney cousin, was going to take over. And so once you get rid of the father and the mother and the successor trustees, so like the husband, my sister's husband, and the cousin, all you have left is me. So I'm the only one that's standing in her way of just her taking everything, right? Because what happened was in 2021, surprisingly, my cousin mysteriously died. So here you've got the only people that are still alive are my sister, who stands to benefit from everything, her husband, who stands to benefit from everything, and me. So if they got rid of me, then they get it all, and no one says boo. And so then my children are written out, right? Because they're my heirs. But if it never goes to me, then my children have nothing. And so, and her children have everything. And so, anyway, it just, estate law is very, it's, you can really, really mess things up. And you can really, really maneuver your way through and put things in your favor, because it's just whatever's on those documents. And we know about forgery, and then we know about going to court and perjuring ourselves. And despite that being a federal offense, a felony, especially when it's in federal court, which is what happened to me. One of my children lied in federal court, and that's a terrible crime. But anyway, let's see. And I told you about I went to the city councilman's meeting, and they said, we'll get back to you. And I thought, okay, I'm going to sit by the phone. And so, yep. So there was surveillance. I told you about that. And but I can never stress that enough, really, because when you know that every time you go to the bathroom, every time you brush your teeth, every time you put a piece of food in your mouth, every time you close your eyes and go to sleep, every time you comb your hair, every time you do everything, there's somebody watching you. And you think, that is sick. That is illegal. It is unlawful. It is harassment. It is absolutely unconscionable. I mean, it's disgusting. And the people that allow this to go on, and the people that are actually watching it, are just as guilty. Because I don't watch those things, because I have never been on the side of someone who would want to commit those crimes. And I just find that it's deplorable behavior. And so, anyway, that's what's going on. And it's now, with cameras being so prevalent everywhere, it doesn't even have to be like this big conspiracy. It can just be people just watching you. Like, you have these stalkers that become obsessed. And it's just really scary, actually. But what else can I tell you? Oh, and all the documents that I had. And but if I go to the store, if I go someplace, and of course I don't have a car, and so someone has to drive me. And so so they come in and they pillage through your documents, and all of a sudden the document you really need is gone, and then you're like, what am I going to do now? And so that happens too. And then when you're gone, all of a sudden you come back and you take a bite of something, and it's like, oh, there's that chemical taste, or oh, I feel like my insides are burning, or oh, so you have the tampering and the potential homicide, really. And so it's just gross, actually. But and my poor father, and my mother, after I moved here to Clearwater in 2004, unfortunately I brought all of that gunk from Chicago down here, because all of a sudden their condo was under surveillance, and my new condo was under surveillance. Meanwhile, all the stuff in Chicago had been under surveillance, because I was involved in a 5-year divorce. The marital estate was huge as well. And so you have all kinds of things. And my poor father would go, I can't even talk on the phone because it's echoing, or the calls are dropped, or the Wi-Fi isn't working, somebody's doing that, or I can't find this, or my vitamins, or my pills, or this or that, or they couldn't find their medication. And my mother she was so afraid that people were coming in while she went to the grocery store that she would sleep with her jewels under her covers. She'd hold them while she's sleeping. And I thought, oh, my poor mommy, that's just no way to live. And and yet that was so much better than when they threw her in the institution, when they threw her in the Alzheimer's facility, if you know what I mean. Which really, I don't believe she really belonged there, actually. But that's my personal opinion. But it did get her out of the way to clear the path for the thieving of the estate, for sure, due to boundless greed and ego and all kinds of crazy things. Let's see. Oh, and I told you, in other videos, my sister, after my father died and my mother died 9 months later, there were funerals for each of my parents, and I wasn't allowed to go to the funerals because my sister wanted to arrive in the limo by herself and her family, and so I wasn't even allowed to be part of the procession. And they said, oh no, she's delusional. I think that was the term they used. She's delusional, and she could embarrass us or something, or I actually wondered if they told somebody I was so nuts that I might injure my parents' body or something. I might damage my parents' body or something like that, because it was like the people at the mortuary that were standing outside of the Greek church letting people in. They said, no, you're not allowed to come in until your sister arrives in with the procession, and you have to wait outside. And I thought, well, hell on you, that's my father too, that's my mother in there too. And they weren't going to even let me come to the funeral until I got an attorney to say, on the basis of what, why would you do that? Because you want to be the star at a funeral? Shame on you. But anyway, it was all weird. And the priest, actually, the Greek priest said, my parents had one daughter. Yeah. And tradition is that there's a cross on the body laying in the casket. And right before or after they close it, well, they take it before they close it, and then they hand the cross to the children, or one child, or whatever. So both times my sister, they said, oh, well, they have one child, and so Irene got the cross. And I thought, oh, yeah, I don't exist. I'm just an illusion. And then you're delusional, not me, if I'm not really here, but you see me. So anyway, it was just ridiculous, right? Anyway, what I choose to remember about my family is the goodness and the love. And I talk about this a lot because somewhere deep in my psyche, I'll always think of myself as a little Greek girl. And so I just remember living with my grandparents when I was a little girl, and my father was working in Chicago at a hospital, and so we were staying with my grandparents because he was rarely home anyway during his residency. And so I just remember it was all Greek language and Greek music and Greek food and Greek this and Greek that. And it was just, I always said I was a little Greek girl. And I have this one story that I probably write in virtually every book I've written, but I just love it because I was about 2 or 3 years old. And there were some little boys that lived down the block. And so one day the doorbell rang, and I looked and I saw the little boys. They were all huddled around the door. And I was so excited, and I thought, oh, good, they're asking me to come out and play. And so I opened the door, and the oldest of these little boys, who maybe he was like 6 or something like that, he punched me in the nose, and he said, "We hate Greeks." And I was like, ah. I was like, well, you're just a hillbilly. No, I didn't say that, and I don't even think I was old enough to even think that. But I was so shocked that anybody would be so biased and prejudiced for a little 3-year-old girl. But anyway, that's my Greek story. And so anyway, I want it to be even more Greek than that. But let's see, what else can I tell you? Told you about the burial plots. Oh, and what they did is at the cemetery, they actually had my parents' caskets on this, on this, I don't know what you call it. Anyway, on this platform. And it was not, there wasn't a hole. They didn't dig the hole there. It was just kind of a mock grave. And I finally realized, someone had mentioned it, that in fact, they didn't want me to know where my parents were buried. And so they just put this mock grave at the entrance to the cemetery. And I thought, wow, because you see, they really wanted me to mourn and to think, wow, and just to kind of lose it, right? Thinking, where are my parents? I don't know where my parents' graves are. I can't go on Mother's Day. I can't go on Memorial Day. I can't go on any holiday or any day ever to see my parents because I don't know where they are. And it was this huge cemetery in Clearwater. And so I realized that sometimes the only thing we can do is focus on our spirituality, and that is our Savior, truly. And so I had to reframe that situation where I wasn't allowed to see my parents and know where they were and even say goodbye to them. But certainly in the cemetery, I didn't know where they were, and I still don't. And all I could do was just know that they're not really in those caskets, and they're not in those graves. My parents' physical remains are, however, their soul never dies, right? And your soul never dies, nor does mine. And so, therefore, our souls have gone on to a different dimension. And so when I see my parents that way, it is so much more comforting, yes, than to think that they are in some 6-foot hole. Truly. And so think about that. And the same thing can hold true when we have arguments. And this came through to me today as I thought, oh my gosh, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And I'm so panicked and I'm frightened and blah, 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 blah. And I thought, you know what? It's an opportunity for another adventure. And when we look at life in that respect, then everything changes. And so I'm glad that I don't know where my parents are. I'd like to have taken them flowers and things like that, and maybe gone and prayed there, just to know that I was in their energy. But you know what? Their energy is all around me, and I don't need to go to a cemetery and see other people mourning. That's their family issues, and so in terms of me and my family, I'm good with it. I'm copacetic with it, right? And so that's the story. So when someone is sick or when someone passes on or whatever, just know that, and this is not being delusional, but just know that truly they have left this place, and Earth is a very difficult place to be, and we are all struggling. And therefore, to know that in fact you've graduated and you don't know where you're going, but you know that it's not here, and that you will find your way in a positive way. And so it's another adventure, and we have one beautiful adventure after another, and we learn. And all the lessons that you've learned here, you can apply them on another direction, on another dimension. And it's all about love anyway. And so here we're just learning what love is and learning how to love and learning the right way to love. And some people never get it. But in fact, we do get it eventually. And that's how we graduate to a higher dimension. Okay, let's see. So I told you, what did I tell you? Oh, and when I'm on Facebook or whatever, because I do post 2 pictures, used to be 3, but I'm kind of I forget to do the third one later at night. I try to do one in the morning and then one in the afternoon, but in the end, I end up bunching them together. But anyway, so I have these people that I don't know, and yet they will post me, or they will contact me. That's what I meant to say. And one of them actually told me he was an attorney from Orlando. And so he did estate litigation. And he actually was doing it in a way where there was mediation. And I think mediation is a wonderful solution to the litigation that so many of us are thrown into. And so I thought, oh, that's really interesting. But wouldn't you know, I just realized that in fact he was a total setup, and my sister had hired him or paid him or whatever. And so he was coming on to me there about let's get together or something, and he was going to drive from Orlando. And right around that time, I said, you know what, this is a setup, and it's just not going to happen. So anyway, I don't know what the intention was there with my sister being in the middle of that, but in fact, it wasn't going to be to my benefit, that's for sure. Oh, I didn't tell you that one day my daddy said to me, he said, you know what, this Christmas, I'm going to divide up your mom's jewelry. And I thought, oh, that's really wonderful. And my mother had this beautiful ring, and he said, I'm going to flip. And whoever picks heads or tails, and that's the one that shows up, they'll get that ring. And then the other one, the loser, will get the equal amount in other diamonds. And so anyway, that was in, oh gosh, that was in, I think, July. And then he was going to divide it Christmas Eve. That was going to be our Christmas Eve presents. And what happened was that my father, mysteriously disappeared in August. And then in December, who got all the jewels? Well, in fact, there was no flip. And by that time, since Irene had pretty much helped herself to everything else in the estate, she also helped herself to all the jewelry too. So isn't that nice? Yeah. God. Oh, did I tell you about Social Security? Well, anyway, I'm entitled to Social Security survivor benefits because my ex, I had heard, has passed. Of course, after about 2010, when he tried to block my bankruptcy, I lost touch with him. I mean, I didn't have touch with him before that either, but I knew through the attorneys that he had attorneys that were filing motions and trying to block this and block that. But anyway, he passed. And in 2017, I decided to see where my survivor benefits were. And in fact, they kept saying, well, we don't have a record that he's dead. And I said, well, I hear that he is, but I don't really know for a fact. And they said, well, when did he die? And I said, well, I don't know. And they said, well, ask your children. And I said, well, they're not speaking to me because I think maybe they're getting that money. But anyway, tell us when he died. Have your son or one of your children call us and just give us the date of death, and then we'll start your benefits. Well, then I spoke to somebody else, and they said, no, you actually have to have a certified copy of the death certificate. Well, I would call, and I had to fill out forms, and I had to send in money and everything. And they said, you know what, we can't find his death certificate. And then they said, well, we're not saying that it doesn't exist. We're just saying that we can't find it. And if we can't find it, you don't get any benefits. And I'm thinking, wow, you know what? This is just what I had thought was going on. It seems like everybody, everywhere, every how, every who that was involved in my life, they would just lose things, or they just couldn't find them, or they just couldn't help me. And so still, 7 years later, here we are in 2024, and this was in 2017, someone else is getting the benefit of my survivor benefits. And meanwhile, I can barely, anyway, it doesn't really matter. But the point is that there's so much theft, and there's so much deception, and there's so much thievery and stuff. You just want to go, bleh. I'm just glad I'm not part of your group because it's too gross. Yeah, what else can I tell you? Oh, I can tell you one other thing, and that is that since my parents had two condos, right? My parents lived in one and I lived in the other. And so I was to get that one, and my sister was going to get my parents because she had a home in Bel Air. So she didn't really need that, but of course she would get it. And it would be even 50-50. Although her condo was more valuable than mine because it was a corner unit and had a spectacular view. I still like mine, and it faced Gulf Boulevard, and that was just fine with me because there was more action, and I could see people walking their dogs and wave to people. Anyway, oops, oh, there's the door. I'll have to finish this later. I'm going to take a break. Bye.